Example 4 is a lot like example 3, but instead of adding and subtracting, now we're going to multiply and divide. So again, you've got a function x squared minus 9. Can you figure out two things that are multiplied together to get that? Now, what they were probably hoping you would do in a situation like this is, can you see that x squared minus 9, you could factor it? And if I factored it, one of the factors could be x plus 3, and the other factor could be x minus 3. That would be what I think this question was leaning towards. But if you made f of x exactly the same thing you started with, what does g of x have to be to make that work? It has to be 1, because anything times 1 stays the same.
You do 2x squared minus
18 and then a half. You could. I mean, there's a bunch of different answers that would work. Same thing for b. Here, q of x is x plus 1. So they want it to work out to be x plus 1. So one thing you could do is you could have x plus 1 and have a 3 out in front. And then if you divided by 3, they'd cancel out, and you would be left with just x plus 1.
how about x squared plus 2x plus 5 plus 1?
That's a good, sometimes that gets, it's a good question. Like if I made this x squared plus 2x plus 1, which is basically x plus 1 squared, right? And I divided by x plus 1, it would equal x plus 1, but it would have a hole in it. And so it's not quite right. You have to be careful about non-permissible values. So if they ever do give a question like this, I suggest just making f of x exactly the same. What would you have to divide by to make it the same? You'd have to divide by 1, which I think kind of defeats the purpose of these questions. So you don't get a lot of questions like these. Practice ones, the rest of 8